everyone, I am Laethas and welcome back again for another video. Today I have my manga haul for the month of September 2019, and yes, I do know it is a little bit into October. This just so happened to be the chance I actually got to record that video, but before we get into the manga haul, I would like to make a special mention. Several weeks ago, I uploaded a video where I got to interview Ed Chavez of Denpa Books. It was a great experience for me. I've liked several of Denpa's titles that they have put out thus far, and I'm really excited to see what titles they have to put out in the future. So if you'd like to see an interview with one of the newest manga publishers in the game, I would highly recommend checking that video out. There will be a link to it down in the description below. Made me very happy to do that, and I thank him greatly for his time. But with that out of the way, let's get right into this haul. First up, I have the 40th volume of Berserk. Not really too many introductions here. Everyone knows what Berserk is. And to answer the question, yes, I am a fool. I am picking up the hardcovers as well as these singles. I like Berserk a lot, so, you know, it makes sense for me to pick up both of those. It's only one series that I'm double dipping on, so it's not too big of a deal for me, especially since these singles are caught up and the volumes release like once a year to a year and a half because of the release schedule of this series. But if you've not yet heard of Berserk, it's a very dark, gritty, high fantasy series I would recommend checking out, unless you don't like super dark, gory type material, then maybe stay away. But if you're wanting a high fantasy, this is probably one of the best ones out there. Definitely recommend checking Berserk out. And I must say, I really love this cover, though I don't like the white borders, you know, these giant thick white borders that Dark Horse puts around their volumes. I've been taking a look at some of the Japanese cover volumes, and they look extremely nice, like much better than just the solid white border that we have here in English. But oh well, it is what it is, and it's not really that big of a deal. But we still get these nice cover images. This one I think is absolutely fantastic. But that is Berserk Volume 40. Next up, I have Elven Lead Omnibus 2. I believe this is 2 of 4, so I think this contains volumes 4, 5, and 6. Not really a whole lot to say about this series either. It has an incredibly popular anime series. I watched that, I enjoyed it, and I wanted to see sort of what the source material is like. So I decided to pick up these volumes. Since there is only going to be 4 of these omnibus volumes, and I've seen the anime, I've just decided to hold off on reading it until then. But yeah, Elven Lead Omnibus 2. Very gory at certain parts, and very, like, odd at other parts. Kind of hard to explain. But the anime was known for being extraordinarily violent and gruesome, so I'm not sure how much of that was exaggerated for the anime spectacle, or if that was actually a big part of the manga itself. As I said, I've yet to get into this. But yeah, Elven Lead Omnibus 2, we'll see how the original fares against the anime adaptation. Next up, I have Our Dreams at Dusk, Volume 3, or Shimaname Tasogare, Volume 3. This is a 4-volume long series, so only one more volume to go. And I've only read the first volume, but what I read of it was absolutely excellent. If you are looking for a series that deals with interpersonal conflicts, especially dealing with sort of identity and figuring out who you are, sort of the things that you like, that kind of thing, this is an absolutely excellent series. And of what I read of the first volume, I cannot wait for that final volume to come out so I can read the rest of the series. But Shimaname Tasogare gets an incredibly high recommendation from me, and I definitely recommend you check this series out. Next up, I have The Ancient Magus Bride, Volume 11. Now, I enjoyed this series thus far of what I've read. I believe I've read through Volume 7, and I decided to stop reading it a little bit so I could fill a backlog of books that I could kind of read in bulk. But of what I read of this series, it's a very whimsical-natured, supernatural fantasy-esque series set in kind of contemporary times. And if you're looking for more of a whimsical, more laid-back series, though it does have its very sort of intense moments to it, but most of the time it's very kind of relaxed and meandering. But it does have those intense moments, as I've said before. If you're looking for that kind of supernatural series, or if you've seen the anime that was produced a while ago, then I definitely recommend checking this series out. Here are the front and back covers, but yeah, The Ancient Magus Bride. Highly recommend checking this series out. And if you've seen the anime and you liked it, definitely recommend checking out the source material. But that is The Ancient Magus Bride, Volume 11. Next up, I have Volume 5 of How to Build a Dungeon, Book of the Demon King. Now, if you already know about this series, then you know whether you want to pick it up or not. It's highly sexual in nature at parts, and then not at others, and it mostly focuses on our main hero and him kind of getting revenge kind of on the society around him for something that happened in his past. And so it is set in that fantasy style world with very similar to many isekai elements, so it isn't an isekai. But if you're looking for a high fantasy series and you don't mind sexual content, this might be a series to check out, though I don't think it's the best of its kind. There are better ones out there, but this one is decent for what it is. And I don't find any of the characters to be particularly, extremely annoying. They all seem to, work pretty well together, and none of them really get on my nerves all that much. But yeah, that is Volume 5 for How to Build a Dungeon, Book of the Demon King. Next up, I have Nameless Asterism, Volume 4. Now, I have yet to read any of these volumes because this is only a 5-volume series, and I decided just to wait until they're all out and then binge read it. But yeah, as I said before, it is 5 volumes long. Don't really know much about it, though I do hear it was canceled or has a rushed ending, so that's kind of unfortunate. So I guess we'll see how that ends up being when Volume 5 comes out. But yeah, this is Volume 4 of Nameless Asterism. Only one more until this series is complete. Next up, I have Volume 1 of Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out. And this series is probably going to be a hit or miss for you because of its particular comedic style. It has more of a trolley, I guess, kind of humor. I'm probably going to go volume by volume because that's not particularly my style of humor, but I still enjoy it from now and then, so I'll probably, be determining whether I buy the next volume with each successive volume. So this one was a decent volume for me. It might not be for you, but basically it just centers around Uzaki-chan and her senpai and them hanging out, and she is pretty much a troll, and she's going to do things that he doesn't particularly like, but he's going to go along with because whatever, he doesn't particularly like conflict, basically, and he's just going to go along with it. As for Uzaki-chan, there is a little bit of 3D in the cover. Not sure if my camera is very good at getting that. So yeah, there is that, which is kind of hilarious in my opinion. But if you think this is going to focus primarily on that aspect of the character, there are very few moments where that's actually the case. Mostly it's going to be between her interactions with senpai and senpai's interactions with her. So the focus is not so much on that aspect of our character, aside from a few gags here and there. But if you are looking for a new comedy series that has more of a trolling sense of humor, then I would recommend checking Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out. But yeah, this is Volume 1. There are 3 volumes out in Japan. I'm going to get Volume 2. If I, continue to enjoy the series, I'll pick up Volume 3 after that. But this isn't a series that I really want to binge read. But yeah, that's Uzaki-chan Wants to Hang Out, Volume 1. Next up, I have Kaguya-sama, Love is War, Volume 10, and this is basically a romantic comedy wherein these two characters want the other to confess their feelings for the other because they don't want to do it themselves because they would quote-unquote be losing if that were the case, and it involves them trying to get the other one to express their feelings of admiration and love for the other, and comedy ensues. Each of the characters are quirky in their own sort of unique way, and they mesh well together. Some characters like each other, other characters really do not like each other, and so it adds for some interesting interactions between the characters, especially when some characters, the relationship between them is misunderstood by another character, and, you know, that's pretty standard rom-com shenanigans, but, yeah, I particularly enjoy this one. I think the characters mesh very well, and the archetypes aren't the worst, and they kind of feel at least a little bit unique in the sense of this series, and they don't feel like 100% copy-pastes of other characters from other series. But that is Volume 10 for Kaguya-sama Love is War. Next up, I have Vampire Knight Volumes 1, 2, and 3. So that is all the volumes that are out in English thus far. I believe there are 4 volumes out in Japan currently. This is kind of a sequel series to the original Vampire Knight series, which I did quite enjoy, and so I've decided to pick up these volumes, and it kind of covers a bunch of short stories about all of the characters after sort of the events of the original. If you're a big fan of the original, I'd recommend checking these out, though I think in order to get a lot of enjoyment out of this series, you would have to have read the original, because the moments that happen in this series kind of rely on you having knowledge of the original, so it's not a sequel that can really stand on its own, in my opinion. But if you like the original Vampire Knight, then I would definitely recommend checking out Vampire Knight Memories. Otherwise, if you've not read the original, I'd recommend checking out the original because I think it's a very solid series. And then if you enjoyed that, maybe consider getting the sequel series Vampire Knight Memories. But as I've said, if you've not read it, you're not going to get as much enjoyment out of this sequel series. But I have been enjoying it, and I cannot wait for Volume 4 to come out, and then we will be caught up with Japan, unless a 5th volume comes out between now and then. But that is Volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Vampire Knight Memories. Next up, I have Happy Marriage Volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I do have the complete series of Happy Marriage. I've read the first half of the series, so these first 5 volumes. Really enjoyed it so far. If you're looking for Maki and Joji series, I guess if you've read any of her other works, this is going to be very similar to those, and I would recommend checking this one out. As for just general recommendations, if you're looking for a romance, this is a pretty good one to go with. Has some decent elements. Characters aren't super toxic, so that's always great. Never know what you're going to get in these kinds of series. Sometimes the characters are extremely toxic and it's very bad, but sometimes they're not, and that's always a pleasant sort of experience when the characters aren't awful. But yeah, 10-volume long series, not super long, and they're these Viz volumes, so they're extremely cheap, only $10 per, at least relatively speaking to other volumes. But as I've said, I've read the first 5, been enjoying it thus far, and you know, I will be reading the latter 5 very soon. It is basically just the relationship between these 2 characters, because they got married. They did agree to get married, but it wasn't like a choice in the sense that they'd been going out for a while. They just kind of ended up married, and neither character really necessarily wanted it to happen, but it was beneficial to both of them if they just agreed to do it. So they ended up getting married, and as this sort of progresses on, you know, they end up kind of liking the situation that they end up in. So it's kind of just their interactions, figuring out what is going on. But it's definitely a series I would recommend checking out, especially if you want a good romance series. But This is Happy Marriage, the complete series, volumes 1 through 10. Next up, I have Ran in the Grey World, Volume 4. Only 3 more volumes to go until this series is complete. As for series that this is similar to, I'd definitely say it feels similar to The Ancient Magus Bride, though that is going off of just the first volume, because since this is only 7 volumes, I really like the first volume. I just decided to wait until all 7 were out to continue the series, but if you like The Ancient Magus Bride, I think you'll feel very at home in this series. Aside from that, it does keep that whimsical nature. There is an element that you will find problematic, most likely, because our main character is quite young, but when she puts on a special pair of shoes, she kind of becomes an adult in the sense that her form changes, but she's still a young kid, and so her interactions with some characters that don't really know that are going to feel problematic. Yeah, but just thought you should be aware of that. But if that isn't really going to stop you from enjoying the series, definitely recommend checking it out. It has a very good whimsical atmosphere to it, very similar to that of The Ancient Magus Bride, as I've said before. But this is one of the better series that came out at the end of last year, and I would definitely recommend giving this one a chance. Next up, I have Doro Hedoro, Volume 23. This is a very thick volume. So, you know, if you've been reading this series, you know the very beginning volumes were kind of thin, and then as the series got on, they have gotten progressively thicker. And this one is gigantic. And Viz has done a very nice job with the release of this series. This series has always been very nice, like, sort of in its presentation. But as for the series itself, this is the final volume of Doro Hedoro. If you're looking for a series that is really just unique, there's not really another series like this one. If you're looking for something different, something to sort of refresh your brain with a new type of series, I definitely recommend checking out Doro Hedoro. That being said, it is pretty dark. Characters die pretty gruesome deaths in this series, so if you're not a fan of that, maybe steer clear a little bit, but if that's not really going to bother you, I definitely recommend checking out Doro Hedoro. It is 23 volumes long, and it is in these nice Viz releases. Viz releases are hit or miss. This series got a very nice publication. But yeah, if you're looking for something different, check it out. It's about these two characters' relationship, but there's a whole bunch of characters that are all kind of intertwined in their own unique ways, and I really feel it does that sort of interconnected character narrative very well. So if you're looking for a series with a lot of characters that all interact really well, definitely recommend checking it out. This has like 2 different worlds. You have like the Hole, you have like the Sorcerer world, and they like interact with each other. Sorcerers like to mess with people in the Hole. And it's just weird and crazy, and there's a bunch of, like, nonsense that ends up happening that really is unique to this series, and I really haven't seen anywhere else. And Q Hayashida's artwork is extremely unique, and if you've not looked at it, well, hopefully we will open to a page that'll be fine, and we're good. But, yeah, her artwork, very nice. Yeah, Doro Hedoro Volume 23. Definitely recommend checking out this series. And these volumes, they start off thin, but they get very large as the series goes on, but they maintain their same price, so that is nice. That is Doro Hedoro Volume 23. Next up, I have Killing Me Volume 1, though I think this is going to be the only volume of the series, because I think it got canceled, or the author stopped it for health reasons or personal reasons, but this may be the only volume. It still has the 1 on it, but yeah, this is Killing Me. This is a Yuri series about a vampire girl and a vampire hunter girl. I was very sad that it was canceled because of what I read in this series. I really enjoyed it. Not really top tier, but very good tier Yuri series, and I definitely recommend checking it out if you're a Yuri fan. Aside from that, if you want vampires, there aren't too many series with vampires, though it is becoming more of a thing recently, I think. this one is a very solid one, and it really does a nice job sort of explaining these characters' relationship. And yeah, not really a whole lot more to say. Sad to see it, you know, be discontinued, but yeah, if it ever does continue, I will definitely be picking up more volumes, but that is Killing Me, Volume 1, probably of 1. Next up, I have Kaiju Girl Caramelize, and this is a story about this little girl who has a condition where whenever she kind of like has feelings of love, like the butterflies in her stomach, she turns into a giant kaiju monster that's very similar to Godzilla. And so her approach to romance and kind of getting close to other people has been affected by this. And it's about her interactions with the person that she likes and some of the other quirky characters that are around. Like, there's this one girl that loves kaiju monsters, and so she's kind of trying to keep the fact that she's the giant kaiju monster secret, as this other girl is secretly like a massive, like, extreme super otaku fan of this giant monster. And sort of the boy that she likes, her trying not to let him find out about the fact that she is a giant monster. But this is a very well done series, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. I believe there are 3 volumes out right now, but yeah, Kaiju Girl Caramelize, very interesting series, definitely recommend checking it out. You may know Spica Aoki from her other series, or one of her other series, Beasts of Abigail. So you will be very familiar with her art style, which is lots of sparkles. But yeah, this series did run in a seinen magazine, though the art style is very uniquely hers. But yeah, definitely recommend checking out Kaiju Girl Caramelize. Next up, I have Sekirei Omnibus Volume 9, and I believe this completes the main story, but there is a 10th single volume that I think is kind of like an epilogue to the series, but I believe the main story is contained within this 9th omnibus. As for what Sekirei is and what it is about a bunch of girls fighting each other, because they are the Sekirei, and there can only be one, basically. Well, not necessarily one. They have what is called an ashikabe, which is kind of like their master, kind of. It's the person they're, like, tied to, and there can be only one of those. But yeah, so it's about our main character and his Sekirei trying to sort of be the last one / save the people that are, like, in this predicament in the first place. I've seen the anime series, both of them, and I've read the first volume of the manga. Now that it is coming to a close, I will continue to read this series, but this is very much a battle action-heavy series with some connections, relationships, romance thrown in there as well. If that sounds like your cup of tea, then I would recommend checking it out, because I think it delivers on those aspects pretty well. If that's not what you're looking for, it has some fun action scenes in it. But yeah, that is Sekirei Omnibus Volume 9. Next up, I have the 6th Full Metal edition of Full Metal Alchemist, 1/3 of the way through these Full Metal editions. Probably don't really need to say too much about Full Metal Alchemist. Most people know what it is, and these are just kind of the hardcover reprintings of the series. There are 27 volumes of the original series. There are going to be 18 of these hardcover volumes. If you're a big fan of the series and haven't yet picked it up, these are good ones to go with. They're not too much more expensive than the standard single paperback volumes, and they are in these nice hardcover volumes. But yeah, it's Full Metal Alchemist. Not really a whole lot to say about that. One of the most popular series out there. I believe it's currently sitting, or at least the Brotherhood anime is seated at number 1 on MAL. I believe Your Name fell below it. Can't remember exactly. And the manga, on the manga side, is up there as well. I think it's in the top 5. But yeah, Full Metal Alchemist, very well-known series, and it's just nice to finally have them in these hardcover volumes. But that is the 6th Full Metal edition for Full Metal Alchemist. Next up, I have A Bride's Story, Volume 11. We are now caught up with Japan, although I think Volume 12 is coming out there somewhat soon. But absolutely love this series. It has a bunch of different connections, setting Central Asia to sort of the Middle East and Anatolia. Very interesting to see all these characters, because we have this guy, well, this volume primarily focus on these two characters, and their relationship, because, well, actually, I shouldn't spoil it. There's some spoilers, because this stuff that happens in Volume 3 is now kind of starting to ripple through to Volume 11, and it's very interesting. Really enjoyed this volume, though there is a very long series about, like, how old pictures were taken, and the different chemicals that needed to be used, and how, like, the framing was made, and how to set up the camera and all that kind of stuff. So there is some of that. I'm more interested in the dynamics between the characters, but her artwork is excellent nonetheless. You can probably tell that just by this one cover page, and if you go back here, that sky just looks absolutely fantastic. Actually, I will show you one page right now. Just the detail in the clothing is insane. Oops, I'm bumping the camera. But just on this one page, you can tell how much, like, how detailed her artwork is, and it's absolutely incredible. But if you've been reading this series, you know that already. But this is the 11th volume of A Bride's Story. Highly recommend checking this one out, especially because of all the well-done characters and how they interact with one another, and the unique setting that you really almost never seem to see. But that is A Bride's Story, Volume 11. Next up, we have another Kaoru Mori work, Emma, Volume 1. I read this first volume, I really liked it, so I have ordered Volume 2, so that will be in the next manga haul. Little sneak peek for you all. This is similar in dynamics, as in it's about relationships between characters, but this one is set in London as opposed to sort of Central Asia. And I do enjoy this series, though I think I enjoy A Bride's Story more than this one, but this is definitely a good one to go to if you like The Bride's Story. Really enjoy seeing the relationship between our two main characters there, and obviously Emma. But one thing also about this volume is it has multiple covers. If I can do this, so if I take this flap off, there we go, you'll see that that's another volume cover. So take that flap off. I know this is kind of cumbersome. And there's the other volume cover. But yeah, so if you don't like the cover that it gives you, there's another one that you can always use instead. So that is kind of cool, kind of unique. Although I think since this is an omnibus, it's just the covers for volumes 1 and 2. But yeah, it's still nice to have both options available. And this series, I think, is a decent series to go with. Again, I've said I think A Bride's Story is better. But this one is still a solid series in its own right, and if you much prefer the setting of sort of Victorian era London, then I would definitely recommend checking this series out. And last up for this manga haul for the month of September 2019, I have Levius, or Levius, story and art by Haruhisa Nakata. This is not flipped, by the way. It was actually done left to right in Japan, I do believe. And it is 3 volumes in one in this giant hardcover put out by Viz Media. I believe there's an anime coming out on Netflix somewhat soon, and there is a sequel series that Viz Media is also going to be putting out. As for this original 3-volume series, it's very steampunk. You can probably see that just by our title character. or our cover character right there. It's about fighting, like MMA, kind of. They call it MMA, but it's not MMA in the sense that it's mixed martial arts. I believe it was machine martial arts or something like that in the series. But basically, it's fighting, and people fight in this ring, and our main character wants to fight and be the best because there's answers that he wants, where if he ends up getting sort of to be at the top, he'll be able to get those answers that he wants, but there are people in his way. One problem I did find with the series is that I feel the villain is too comically evil. It's hard to explain without being spoilery, but he's evil too much so. Like, there isn't, like, it's hard to put into words. He's just evil, and he's super evil for the sake of being extremely evil. I find it difficult to understand, like, his motivations. I guess he's just crazy, but I don't feel that makes for the best of villains. And I didn't really like that aspect. I kind of like the villains to have their own sort of, you know, motivations for doing things that are not just, well, they're crazy or they're insane or anything like that. I feel that's kind of boring, and he's extremely evil. Like, when you read this, you'll be able to tell that this guy is just literally evil. So that is a little bit of a problem with the series. I hope it can get fixed in the sequel series, because I will be picking that up, and at least reading the first 1 or 2 volumes. But if you are looking for a steampunk series, this is a good one to check out. Good action scenes, the way that it is drawn, it has kind of like blur in some parts to kind of like focus the action. Like here, yeah, this first panel, you can see that the background has been blurred to put emphasis sort of on our characters there in the front. I don't know if it's appearing very well on the camera, but yeah, the art style is very unique. Yeah, it's a solid series. It's action heavy. I just feel it could use a little bit of work with the main villain. But it's a solid series. It's in this nice hardcover volume, and it does have a sequel series coming out that could rectify some of the problems I had with this original one. But I would recommend giving it a look if you're interested in that steampunk setting, or you want a series with more emphasis sort of on action. But yeah, that will do it for Levius, or Levius, sort of the first series, all-in-one, hardcover, omnibus. And that will do it for this manga haul for the month of September 2019. A little bit of a long one here. Let me know what you thought of the series I hauled this month. Are there any series that you particularly like or particularly want to check out? What series did you pick up this month, and what recommendations do you have for me to be picking up? It's pretty stagnant for me. I'm trying to finish the series that I have before moving on to newer series. I had more volume 1s in this haul than I typically do, I believe, and that's because some of the series have been ending, or are very close to ending, that I have been picking up. Yeah, let me know all your thoughts down there in the comments down below. I always love reading the comments, especially the long thought-out ones. But yeah, that will do it for this manga haul. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and share. And if you'd like to keep up to date with all of my content, you can hit that subscribe button and ring that notifications bell, or follow me on Twitter. There's a link for that in the description down below. As for that, any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, leave those in the comment section. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this manga haul for the month of September 2019. Don't forget to check out that Denpa Books interview. I am Laethas. Goodbye.